Okay, I think the streaming is all set up, so I'll get started. So I'll basically go, well, homework 6, we don't provide you any code, and then I look through the techniques that you'll be using for homework 6. There's only brush that we have not used in previous homework, so I'll mostly be talking about brush. But before we start, because we don't actually provide you any code for this homework, so please keep in mind that use good development practice on this homework. So which means like do not write everything in a single file, separate out your components. And then when you name your variables, make sure that they make sense, not just ABC. And then when you do styling, make sure to use CSS instead of just directly hard code them, because a lot of the time it's easier to just do class and it's easier for the code, and it's less probable that you will misspell something and it's really hard to figure that out. So like make sure to use CSS for consistent styling. And then for the last point, I say try not to copy paste code. If you have the same thing that just keeps happening for like multiple components, you make a function and then like with some input and then do that again. So instead of like have the same code appearing consistently in your homework. And so just to go like array map, I think like for almost all the homework you'll be using this, just to reiterate on this. So array map, just remember like dot map. This is very similar to for each. So for dot map, it iterates through all the elements in an array and return a modified copy of the original array. So you need to assign this to something else because it will not change the original array. And then so just anonymous function stuff. These three are all the same. So you can have a variable and then have a curly brace and return something inside, or you can have function, variable, and then return something. But because this is so easy, it's just D+2, so you can just write one line like this. These are equivalent, but remember that the last one, it will only work if you have one line. So if you have multiple lines, it will not work for something like this. And for the other two, you must have a return statement, because when you have curly braces, it's a function and then it expects you to return something. Okay, so to go through D3 brushes, so D3 brushes, there are two types. Normally we have, if it's just D3.brush, it's a two-dimensional brush that makes a rectangle. And then there's also 1D brushes. So there's brush X and brush Y. They're one-dimensional brush along the X and Y dimensions, depending on which one you call. And then for the homework, let me just go to the homework page. This is the homework. And then you can notice that for the brush here, so it's like you brush, this is only along this X dimension. So you probably want to use brush X for this because the brush is not like a rectangle that of any size. It's always taking the full height and only change on the X, only changing the X width. So it's the X dimension. And then you can set the extent of your brush. So you want to set like where does it go and where does it end. Normally it will be X0, Y0. This is like if you have a rectangle, it's the left upper corner and the right lower corner. So that's the extent that you should set your brush at. This applies to both the brush X and brush Y. So you still need to specify the extent when you have one-dimensional brush, but just like, but you'll see this in the example, yeah. And then normally, so this is pretty similar to like when we do axes. So you would append a G and name a class, like this is standard. So this is giving a function named define a D3 brush X function and then name it the brush, and then you call this when you append the G. So this is how you initialize a brush. And then the brush has three basic events. So it has start, brush, end. And then what happens is goes into the brush function in here. So you will probably be putting in some stuff for three types of events. So here is an example that I put together. So here we have three rectangles, and then for each one, I put a data set for it. And these data sets are different. So let's just go through the code here. So I have data 1, 2, 3 named here. And then you can see that these are just coordinates that I used to draw the circles. And then we set up the SVG and append 3G. And we say these are all brushes. So we name them the class name brush. And then we just append the rectangles and the circles. And for the circles, you can see that I'm binding the data. And then for each circle, it's using the coordinates I input in there. And then, so for the brush, here is how you do the brush. Okay, so for each one, there is brush group. So brush group is just selecting the 3 Gs that we named as the class. And then these are two variables that we'll use to define which brush is active. So this actually works for all of these. So you need to keep track of which brush you're using because these are 3 different brushes. And then for each one of them, we have a function that is what is the current selection? And then this is, so you just name it this. And then on the D3 selection of that, you just do a selection, and then this is this. It's the same. And then we have a brush defined here. So because we go in this direction, so we say it's brush Y, and then we define the extent of the brush. So it goes from 0, 0, which is the left upper corner, and then it goes to 350 and the height, which is the right lower corner. So notice that you still have to define 2 corners, even if your brush is going in one direction. And then we're gonna give it the event handler that will be doing the update. So when you start the brush, it will first check if the current active brush is the same brush. So imagine that we have selected here. So now this is the current active brush. But if we change it to this one, it's a different brush. So we need to clear this original brush. So this is why we have a check here if active brush and the selection is not the active brush node, then we will clear the other brush. So the active brush node, which was the previous selection, will just call this and then make it null. And this is how you clear the previous brush. So now we have this active brush. So we'll set the brush to the active brush so that it refresh the variable. So now active brush is the actual active brush, and the active brush node is the actual active brush node. So when you do a new selection, it will clear the old one and then make this into the new active brush. And this rectangle G is the active brush node. And then during the brush, so this happens when you do this motion, this is on brush. So first, it will select the elements in here, and then you want to make sure that this is not empty. So this is just a check that not empty, but it's undefined. So you just check that this is actual something that we will be using, and then we'll name these 2 variables because this will return the same thing. So we'll just name it, and then just to see what it looks like. And then if we do console brush, So you can see, oh, this is this different thing.
I have a question about the 0, 350. I can understand the 0, 0 for the, or the, 0, 350 for the X, but for Y, you set it to 0 in height. Does that 0 just start wherever you click? It's line, looks like 32. Yeah. So I know the first 0 was X-axis and the 350 was X-axis, but the Y-axis, it says 0 and 350. You hard-coded a 0 there.
Does yeah, because you want to start like from the upper left corner.
Oh, so that's the whole region that you're allowed to click.
This 0, 0 is like right here.
Okay, so you're allowed to click anywhere in there, is what that says.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So it's like you're saying it starts from the upper left corner, which is 0, 0, and then it ends at the right left corner, right lower corner, which is, so like, let's just change this so that you, okay. So what will happen?
I thought that was supposed to show the highlighted area, not
so you see that I cannot click here because we set the start to be 100, 0. So it's from X and it goes like, this is where 100 started.
Got it.
So that's why we have 0, 0, because you want to have to extend like the entire rectangle, right? And then, so we just name it here. And then Y1, Y2 is just where it started on the y-axis and where it ended. So this started at 99 and it ended at 274. So this is the information that will be used to see if the circle is actually in a brush. I'm just gonna comment this out so that it doesn't just keep printing stuff. Okay, so we're gonna first select all the circles and say they're not brushed. So I have a class defined in here. So if they are brushed, the field becomes red. And then, so we first like basically say all of them are not brushed, and then we filter the groups. So we use the active brush node. So this is representing this part. It's like whatever the active brush is, there's an active brush node, which is the selection that we'll be using. So this is a selection, and we'll select all the circles inside. And then for the circle, we use a filter. So depend on the data. So we want the Y location of the circle to be inside of the brush. And remember, Y1 and Y2 is like, I define it here to be the extent of the brush that is active. So we will be see like, because the second element, this is the Y location of the circle. So you want it to be bigger than the first constant first variable of the extent, and smaller than the second variable of the extent. So we'll just filter that out. And then for all the circles that become true when this is applied, they will be brushed. So we just class them true brushed. So this is how we define the red circles here. Not define, but like how to find it. And also I have a text here, just like it's a just standard div. And then for this, I just select the based on ID, and then I update the HTML saying we want to show the coordinates of these circles. And so I just do like select data points. This is the original text, and then filter groups, which is defined in here. So that was filtered out, and then we only have the brushed circles in this selection. And then dot data, without any input, this will give you what is the data binded to it. So we want to get the data out, and then I just do a simple like map so that it actually prints out coordinates like this format. So this is how, like if you select something, this text will also update. You will probably be using this for your homework because you need to get the data out when you apply a brush. And then when the brush ended, if this brush no longer becomes a selection, we want to be, so like that happens when you do something like this. So that brush, if you just click somewhere else here, it should clear. So that becomes like that's brush selection, and this is not actual selection, so it was null probably or undefined. So when that happens, you just want to make all the circles not brushed, and then we update the text here so that it's not having any points brushed. And then after you define all of this, it was called brush. And then you just want to call this defined function on the selection. So this selection was the like the for each, and then from this. And then yeah, that's how you use a brush for multiple like how you have multiple brush in a single canvas. Any question about what we just went like any question about the code here? Okay. Actually, that's all I prepared for the homework 6, because this is the only technique that you have not used for previous homework. So like any question about homework 6, like this is like you can make this with a table or something else, like with G elements to do layouts, and then this is table that you used in homework 5 as well, I think. And then yeah, only the brush is not covered in previous homeworks. Okay, I think then we can just wrap up. It's rather short.
One quick question for
Yes.
the bee swarm plot. So the layout that we're using for the bee swarm plot, is that one of the forest layouts?
So it actually is an extra credit if you want to use D3-Force. So there is a data set that does not have force simulation. So if you look at the data here, so there is one called words and one we call words without force simulation. So words actually has the position provided for you. Like I'm not gonna scroll this, but like the part that you'll be drawing this actually tell you what you'll be using. So there's source X, source Y. It says like there's also move X, move Y. So you'll just use those as your position, but you can also do D3 for simulation, and that will give you extra credit.
Oh, okay. So I mean, the positions are hard coded, and we would just essentially be making the scatter plot with hard coded positions for the bubbles.
Yeah. So you'll just use that location that already is in the data.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that. When you split it, when you split it into the different components, it looks like the X and Y positions change. Are there two
Yes.
sets of data for that, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there is move X and move Y is the separated one. And then the source X and source Y, I think, is this one.
Okay. Thank
you. So you just want to check that it's, yeah, they are different. You're correct. They do change. Yeah, so, and there are different properties in the data that you will use.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So can you get the solution for homework 5?
I'd rather not do that because there are people that have the extension and have not submitted the homework yet. So they have like extraneous circumstance that they have a couple extra days for homework and they have not submitted, like their extension has not finished yet. So I want to rather wait before everyone has submitted their homework, and then we'll release the solution.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. And we are working on the homework 4 grading. Homework 3 grading is out, I believe. But we're working on homework 4. And there's no other question, then I'm just gonna close today's lab. It's rather fast. It's just because like all the techniques they'll be using, you probably have used it before. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, you too.